Ladies and gentlemen, we're in for such a treat. Absolutely amazing panel of guests here this evening. 650 people, as Declan Madden said, the second most people at a club dinner in Ireland this year. It is absolutely phenomenal. So thank you all for the incredible support to what is an incredible night. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to give our guests an individual intro, fairly short and sweet, so we can get into the conversation. So he's got 98 international caps between Ireland and the Lions. He is Ireland's most decorated rugby player. We won't bore you with all the medals, but it is a lot. Rob Kearney is here. Rob Kearney, come on up to the stage. Our next guest is a player, referee, advocate and ambassador for the women's game, and what a success story the women's game has been over the last couple of years. Please welcome to the stage another board member of World Rugby. It is Sue Carty. Come on up, Sue. There we have it. And finally, I feel like this is last event of the week for him. He's been worked hard, this man, for the last few days. But everybody I've spoken to him has spoken about what an absolute gent and what a wonderful ambassador he is for the game as well. What an honour to have him here as well. The things people do to get a spin in a Donnelly's Land Rover, I tell you, fair play to you, Brian. A World Cup winner, widely considered to be one of the greatest players to ever play our game, and probably the second fastest person in this room. Still got him. Did him once before. We'll do it again. We'll get you out in the pitch later, Brian. Bryan Habana, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Brian, we have to start off with, it is probably your fourth Q&A of the last few days here in Armagh. It should be you welcoming me back here again, but tell us, how have you enjoyed the last few days in beautiful Northern Ireland?
Given the hail we experienced on the 16th green today, I was definitely contemplating if Mr. Steenson did it on purpose. But no, it really is phenomenal. And I sort of chatted to the executive team on Thursday evening, talking about my journey was one very much of club rugby. I never played any representative age group level of rugby in South Africa. So had to go to university, played sort of 3 years of age group level there, got initiated, and had become a Springbok before ever playing Super Rugby. So to see the real ethos of club rugby, and to see how club rugby, particularly in Ireland, is really instituted on incredible values, where the game is in an extremely volatile and difficult position globally. I think to see those true rugby values come through has been absolutely phenomenal. I think the hospitality has been on another level. Even having to give Stino £10 today will always remain a detrimental one, but he did have to get me back for Toulon beating the Exeter Chiefs at Sandy Park in 2013. So Stino, I'll give you that one. But yeah, it has been amazing, and I think the club rugby game, in a game that is just so struggling with so many things at the highest level, to see such incredible values, such friendships, it really does feel like a family, and I feel like I've been welcomed into a family these last few days. So to everyone from the city of Armagh, thank you very much for the incredible hospitality I've experienced.
Well done. I want to know how you understood the accents.
So I didn't really understand all the accents. At dinner on Thursday night, Jim sort of asked all the executives to ask me a question, and Shirley Ann was sitting next to me, and Shirley sort of said, Brian, what would your last mail be? And I'm like, fuck, that's a really deep question, Shirley Ann. I'm like, well, Shirley Ann, I don't know who I'd type the mail to. Do you really want me to compose the whole email? So everyone sort of looking around the table. No, Brian, I meant the last meal you want to eat. So Shirley Ann, I really do apologize for starting to type my Dear John letter on death row. But It would be South African meat. Prime rib, probably medium rare.
Don't think this is working again, lads. Bryan just touched on club rugby there, the importance of club rugby. 150 years of the city of Armagh Rugby Club. It's absolutely incredible to be going from strength to strength. From your point of view, somebody who played for St Mary's, UL Bows, seen the club game from the men's and women's side of things, how important is it to see such a turnout and such support of this special game?
Oh, thanks, Tommy. Look, it's gorgeous to be here and celebrate what really is the heart and soul of our game. And I think sometimes we say it flippantly, oh, it's about club rugby. But when you stop and think about it, everyone who has had any role, any position in rugby, be it player, be it coach, be it referee, administrator, committee person, it all started with club. And if you ask anyone, what's the most important jersey they represented, what's the most important, they will say club. Like nothing, we would have nothing without our club game. And when we think specifically, city of Armagh, 150 years, like to keep it going over periods of such challenges, not just working to keep the club going day to day, but that includes thinking ahead. Who's going to come behind me? Supporting people come behind you, looking ahead. Like the level of work behind that and the number of unsung heroes is absolutely huge. And on a personal level, I do need, the encouragement you get on your journey is massive. And back in my early days of playing the game, I didn't even know the RFU committee existed. I just turned up and played the game. So one of the first RFU committee members I met was John Callahan, and John was so encouraging. One of your own, really, John. And, our committee people started at club level as well. John did, and John is one of many who champions the club game around the table and supports people coming up behind him. So it's everything. We would have nothing without our club. So really to celebrate what you've done over the last 150 years and looking to the next generation is massive.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you. I do have to mention to you, Sue, I don't know if you're aware, you live in Limerick now as well, don't you?
I do.
They lost against Cork in the hurling. Did you hear that? There you go, for anyone who knows. It went to penalties. How happy are you to hear that?
I have a funny story about that. I get told everything about referees. So while I was sitting here, I got a message from my brother. So apparently when I went to extra time, the poor referee got a cramp. So one of the players supported the referee. I get sent the photo of the referee getting supported by the player when he got cramped in extra time. So they're the updates I get from matches now, Tommy.
Okay. How interesting. Right, okay, that's a good WhatsApp to be a part of as well. Rob, that's as interesting as your chat most of the time with the team back in the day as well. Only joking. We are talking about the importance of club rugby. You came through school system. Obviously, Cooley played a lot of Gaelic football, but actually, the club that you played with were UCD. Now, UCD wouldn't be very popular here in this room, I don't think, obviously. Oh, we've got a few UCD fans down there. The Donnellys, careful. UCD stayed up, Armagh went down. But what are your memories of club rugby?
Well, firstly, Tommy, can I just say, Tommy, you're doing a brilliant job. Does everyone agree? Well done, Tommy.
Where's this going?
So, Tommy phoned me this morning at 9 o'clock. He was up early. He said, Rob, I'm really fucking nervous about tonight. I've never done anything to over 600 people before. Have you any tips for me? I said, Tommy, just be yourself, okay? So he's doing great.
It's a great phone call, I tell you.
And it brought me back to myself and Tommy used to sit beside on the team bus back in the day. And Bryan, you'll remember this as players. You'd often be talking about, what are you going to do when you retire? And, it was always the dreaded question, life after. And Tommy asked me one day, Rob, what are you going to do when you finish? I said, geez, Tommy, I don't know. I might go back to the farm back in County Louth. I said, what do you... Tommy, this is my story.
Exactly.
This is my story.
Oh, you can see him mucking out all right, can't you? Yeah.
And I said to Tommy, well, what about you? What are you thinking of doing after you play? And he said, television. I'm made for television. It's all I'm going to do. And to be fair to him, he's only gone and done it. Well done, Tommy.
Thank you, Rob. Some of us have a face for television, some face for radio. There you go, lad.
Sorry, what was your question?
Grassroots, how important? I mean, because like you obviously came through the school system, you were a bit of a boy wonder. You probably never learned to pass, you see, that's why I never got the ball.
If I'd fucking Bryan Habana on the wing, I'd learn how to pass.
Sue, I don't know if we're needed anymore. Do we just get off the stage? This comic act. Yeah, this comic act.
I have no reply for that, Rob. Well done. 1-0.
Right, back to your first question.
How is life on the farm?
Do you know what? I actually decided not to go back to the farm.
Oh, funny that. But anyway, grassroots rugby.
Sorry, it was UCD you asked about, wasn't it? Well, I actually started my rugby in Dundalk. So I grew up in County Louth, as some may know, and played all my mini rugby in Dundalk. And I was actually talking to my dad tonight, who used to do all the fixtures for Dundalk back 40, 50 years ago. And he said that Dundalk and Armagh used to have an unbelievable relationship back in the day. I'm not sure if they still do. But grassroots, that's where I learned it. It was in Dundalk, and then I went away to a boarding school in Kildare that was quite rugby heavy, and you know, I played an awful lot of Gaelic football growing up. It was probably the sport that I loved most, and to be able to play the two of them with different seasons was always brilliant. But you know, grassroots is genuinely where it happens. Without it, you don't have an international team. And it's thriving in this country at the moment. It is, and you know, to see so many brilliant clubs, the volunteers, the coaches, everything that goes with it, that is the heartbeat of Irish rugby. And as Irish, we're very lucky to have it.
Absolutely. So, from your point of view, Rob talked about GA and stuff. You played GA and stuff growing up as well.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Tommy. My highlight, the moment of my GA career. Corner forwards, we won the under-14 county final, and we paraded up Roscommon Town like it was the All-Ireland. Amazing. I was very glad to have the opportunity to boast about my GAA days with Sean Kavanagh there over dinner, so thanks, Tommy.
I'd say he loved that. He must have been delighted,
so.
the under-14s. Is it important, though, because you hear a lot in rugby nowadays, young boys and girls are being told to focus on one sport a lot earlier. Do you think it's important for them to try and play as many sports as possible and really find the one that they love?
Well, absolutely. And I'm also thinking of the poor parents that, you know, are running from here to there to try and get them everywhere, and all of that can be a challenge as well. But absolutely, I mean, the joy of experiencing different sports, different experiences, like it's all about the experience, it's all about making friends, it's all about developing as a person. Like, you know, you don't need to choose a sport so early. There is plenty of time for that. It gets serious enough if you really want to commit to it. You know, later on, high performance and everything else kicks in. But ultimately, it's making friends, it's having fun, it's the different experiences, different sports. They all contribute, and it's really important for kids to get to enjoy that. And, you know, it's serious enough for long enough would be my absolute view.
Absolute enjoyment is the biggest thing, and particularly grassroots, what it's all about. Bryan, you have an incredible story about how you got into rugby.
Yeah.
And seeing, you know, growing up, rugby wasn't an opportunity for you as a young lad.
Well, not so much not an opportunity. So for those of you that don't know, named after Brian Robson and Gary Bailey. So yes, for my sins, I support Manchester United, but I will live on the 99 treble.
Oh, a few who do you support if you don't support Liverpool or Man United?
Don't worry, I'll be booing all of you when I play at Old Trafford for the Soccer Aid next week, so all good. No, so, I mean, I grew up in sort of the last part of the apartheid era in South Africa, but I really grew up playing football or soccer. So rugby was the furthest thing from my mind. My dad was a massive rugby supporter and lover, but just didn't get the opportunities through discrimination. And my first ever experience of rugby was the 1995 Rugby World Cup in South Africa. The first time that South Africa not only got to participate, but host the World Cup. And my dad took me out of school for the first time ever. Drove down from Johannesburg to Cape Town. That's sort of about 1,000 miles to get to start witnessing sort of the sport that I'd never really understood. The journey was South Africa beat Australia, the then world champions. I was just perplexed to start seeing people uniting around a symbolic environment of sport. We went to the quarterfinal where Chester Williams scored 4 tries, down to Durban the following week where the French probably should have won if the TMO had been around in 1995, but thanks to television screens that were black and white, we didn't get to have that. And then I was a 12-year-old boy getting to witness South Africa beat New Zealand on the 24th of June, 1995. See Nelson Mandela walk out in that number 6 Springbok jersey that for 80% of the South African population was a sign of oppression. But then getting to hear Francois Pienaar post-winning that game saying it wasn't for the 48 or the 60,000 in the stadium, it was for the 48 million South Africans, like just lit an inspirational dream within inside me. And a watershed moment in my life. I only started playing rugby the following year at King Edward VII School, and my first ever game of rugby, not quite parading down the road like you did with your GA award at under 14 Sue, but my first ever game of rugby was for the under 14 G side. So like just A, B, C, D, E, F. Seven.
He needs all the help.
So I was just helping.
Tommy's the one that failed his GCSEs.
Clongos, they don't do any of that.
But now getting to play a game that I'd been inspired to play, and millions of kids in South Africa have been inspired to play a year prior. Seeing Nelson Mandela understand the phenomenal power that sport had to break down racial barriers, bring people together, unite, and instill hope was something that was just thriving in me. And no matter whether it was 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning in the cold fields of Johannesburg, or working your way up to international level, just seeing sport change people's mindsets, bring people together, and really break down barriers was phenomenal. And 24th of June, 1995, without a doubt, changed the course of my life.
That's amazing. You're here in Armagh. You were in Cardiff, Lisbon, London. You're traveling all over the place. But you do a lot of work in terms for Laureus, the charity. And through that story, the message of how sport can really be an entity to change the world is something you truly believe in.
100%. And I think we sometimes, as South Africans, we forget how fortunate we are that sport has provided such phenomenal moments of unification, whether it be 95 with the Springboks, 96 when Bafana, our soccer team, won the African Cup of Nations, we winning it in 2007, the Soccer World Cup in 2010. But I honestly believe our crowning moment was the 2019 Rugby World Cup, and seeing Siya Kolisi become the first black African to not only captain the country, but to then lift the World Cup trophy, to see Makazole Mapimpi, who walked 10 kilometers to school in the morning, 10 kilometers back home in the afternoon, 5 days a week for 5 years of his life, become the first Springbok to score a try in a Rugby World Cup final, which doesn't say too much about my World Cup history.
At least you made a final.
Or a semi-final. You opened yourself up for that. But in 2019, I was fortunate enough to be at the Yokohama Stadium, and to see a Springbok rugby team that 40 years prior only represented a minority, but to now have players representing a majority and really having the true understanding that dreams do come true, and to have those players, the Ches and Colbys of the world, really speaking to 80% of our population, where in 1995 we only had Chester Williams, 2007 it was only myself and JP Peterson on the field, and that team of 2019, and I know they've been able to replicate it, but I honestly believe that 1995 would be looking at that team and saying, this is what we started, but that's how you finish it. And that crowning moment was incredibly impactful in South Africans really understanding that sport truly has the power to change the world.
Absolutely. Sue, from that, you're one of the Irish rugby representatives on the board at World Rugby. Bryan was talking earlier about the challenges with rugby. A lot of people have spoken about, obviously, the need for money in the professional game and that divide that grows between the professional game and club rugby as well. How important, how big are the decisions that are being faced on the World Rugby boards at the moment? Here we go.
How long do we have?
Let's just keep it nice and relaxed and chilled for the evening, shall we? That's a big question. But yeah, there's lots of really, important things on the table. Financial-wise, sustainability is a real, challenge right now. Everybody knows about that. So there's some, key decisions there and a lot to think through and think about. What's really exciting is the game really is growing. We have over 130 countries that are now members of World Rugby. It's really exciting with what's happening and the potential. And when you look at the impact rugby has around the world, like Laos, for example, is a really small country in Asia. Like, they're using rugby to help really develop human beings, support kids. Like, it's incredible. And actually, Laos is one of the countries where rugby is known as a sport for girls, soccer is a sport for boys. So there's amazing stories, around the place. But there's no question, like, we are faced with the financial challenges, we're faced with big decisions in terms of really making it work. And there is the reality to it around, having the professional end of the game needs to work so that we can continue to grow the game for everybody. And getting that balance is challenging for all of us. So as we look ahead, we've World Cup coming, women in England, Australia for the men's, and then we're into USA 31 and 33. So there's huge opportunity there, but no doubt huge challenges to get those things right so that we can really keep that engine running and growing for the benefit of everybody.
Whenever you're on the World Rugby board, like, how good is it to have someone like the Brains Trust, like Rob Kearney, joining it with you? What does he bring to the table?
That's a very good
Shall
question.
I you?
Hey, no, well, to be fair, Rob, very articulate fella that you are. Yeah, to be fair, there are challenges. There are, and like the club game, you said is flying, but at some stages there'll be some clubs would feel that they're not seeing that. You're seeing that Welsh clubs are folding. You're seeing that a number of clubs over in England are folding. What do you see as the biggest challenge to rugby at the moment?
While he thinks about that, just to say, in answer to like Rob being on the board, it is the first time that we've players represented on the board of World Rugby. So we have Rob and Melody Robinson from New Zealand represent international players around the world. So, having the voice across all participation across the game is really, really important. And in fairness to Rob, I'll let you go back to slagging him off in a minute. And he loves a song, so ask him to sing later as well. He loves a good song.
What about our eyes?
But having that voice is huge.
You forgot the question.
Go on,
like a goldfish. No,
but whenever you're like, it's a tough task.
No, it is.
As a current former player to try and go over there and voice, be the representative of the other players who are playing this game.
No, it is tough, Tommy, and there's no hiding from the fact that rugby is in a very difficult spot at the moment. But there's still a huge amount to be, ambitious and positive about, because it is a wonderful game. The financial piece is the biggest challenge in World Rugby at the moment, and that's on all the international unions. That they run their businesses accordingly, and they're not spending more than they have coming in, because unfortunately there's too many unions who are doing that, and then that cascades down into the provincial rugby and has a knock-on effect right the whole way down to the grassroots. The concussion piece is something that we all have to be very mindful of as well. That if people start to perceive that rugby is too dangerous for their children to play, well, then we've got a long-term issue too. So you're trying to manage that. And to be fair to World Rugby, they're doing everything they can to ensure that the game is as safe as possible, and they're keeping up with all the medical trends and science and everything that's going with that. So they're doing a huge amount of good work on that front from a player welfare perspective. But I would say they're probably the two biggest challenges at the moment. But then, you step back and you look at the women's game, and this World Cup that's coming up in the UK now, it is going to be enormous, and it's going to be great for the game, and that'll get a huge amount more, it'll get an awful lot more fans, it'll get a lot more participation, because ultimately that's what it's about. So, I think rugby is, we can be very hard on ourselves too, in terms of beating up our own sport, and this isn't right, and that's not right, but it is still an unbelievable game, and it's what brought everyone in here tonight together, and it's what we love going to support our local team on the weekend. And I think for that we should be very fortunate, and we should always talk up the positives of this great game.
Absolutely.
I think maybe just on Con's points that we've got into this very negative media cycle of rugby, talking about all the negatives. And I was chatting to some of the execs from the club this weekend, during the course of the last 3 days, and I don't think we actually celebrate the good things about rugby enough. There's no sport in the world, and this is I've yet to find a person who can differ to me. There's no sport in the world where, no matter how young you are, no matter how old you are, whether you're male, female, whether you're a toothpick or slightly less of a toothpick, whether you're short or tall.
In the gym this morning, have you know?
Doesn't look like it. There honestly is no sport in the world that's as inclusive. I was sort of chatting to Evan. There was 8 Mortons playing in a rugby game for Armagh Rugby Club with Willie's 5 cousins as well. Willie Falau's 5 cousins.
They're a dangerous group, that lot, to be fair.
They're a dangerous group, right? You have places in the world where a granddad plays with a dad, plays with a son. That just doesn't happen, and I think we sort of get into this very cyclical negativity around what makes rugby bad. And yes, player welfare is important. Rugby is a contact sport. We talk about World Rugby looking at player height, the tackle height, and all these things. Yet we get kids watching the UFC and saying how amazing Conor McGregor is. So if we start less worrying about the negativity about rugby and really start emphasizing the good things, the camaraderie, the friendships, the ethos, that thing of rugby is a hooligan's game played by gentlemen and women, I believe 100% that it's true. And the more we beat about that bush, the more we change the cycle and the narrative, I definitely think rugby can become a lot more positive in the way we see it.
Absolutely. Do you think we need to promote individuals then as well? The likes of yourself, I was watching YouTube clips of you scoring some tries today with my kids. It was it's phenomenal. We need to promote these individual star talents as well, because there are some unbelievable athletes out there at the moment.
Did you show them the tackle in the Lions?
Well, I showed the one that I scored against you in the corner. I didn't happen to show them the one where you nearly took my head off.
Sternum.
That would have been a red card nowadays, I'll have you know. Anyway.
Hooligan, proper hooligan.
Sternum. I definitely do think rugby needs characters, and I think if we look at all the global sports, rugby's in this very difficult position where, in my opinion, we're not a global sport purely because our calendars aren't aligned. So until we get to a point where the northern and southern hemisphere calendars are aligned, someone's got to give, and in my opinion, it's probably got to be the southern hemisphere, where you move the rugby championship into the Six Nations window, because then World Rugby can start making better decisions around a global season. You can then really start having a competitive World League where everyone is at the end of a season in June or July. Everyone is in the middle of a season in the autumn series in November. So until that happens, we're really going to struggle, because the game's never going to get global if we can't attract global valuation. I think constantly changing rules, it loses your bulk of your fans that have been stewards of it for such a long time. If you have to explain new rules halfway through a season, end of a season, it's absolute bollocks. And I know myself, Sue and Rob, we've sat on some of those World Rugby Committee boards, and you have the player voice, and sometimes it just doesn't get listened to. And I think that's sort of infuriating, because while we're trying to make the game more exciting, we're also making the game more confusing. And in an environment where, from a socioeconomic perspective, you're having to deal with a next generation of viewers that are sort of click to view, want immediate satisfaction, to now tell them that what's happening this year is different than what happened last year, you're going to lose people. So I think we sometimes need to find excellence in simplicity. And in my opinion, what World Rugby have been doing over the last 10 to 15 years, they've been making a complicated game even more complicated on an annual basis. And until we can get that right, I think we're gonna struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's stick to the positives then, Rob. Leinster won today. Woo! Hey, I'm not too sure. Was it the Bulls or Sharks? Who won? The Bulls. So it's a Bulls against... Oh, we're not a happy man over here. Sorry. It's okay, don't worry. Bulls against Leinster final next weekend. Do you think Leinster can get over this hurdle and get this win, which really they need and Irish rugby need?
Geez, I hope so, Tommy, because it'll be a difficult place for players and coaches alike. To be fair to them, in the Heineken Cup or the European Cup as it is now, the last few years, they've been unlucky, and you could argue, on a different day they would have got over the line. But I think what happened this year against Northampton was unforgivable. To have that quality of players at home for the season they had, it was just a complete mental collapse on the day. And it's unacceptable, really, it is. So they do have to win the league. It's not what they wanted to do. I know that when you were playing, you would have been you would have been absolutely delighted with the league.
I won a couple, with the Ospreys, not those two. Yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure on them. A really good team is coming over, but I think for the sake of Leinster rugby and Irish rugby, it's something that needs to happen, definitely.
Sue, another real positive on the world scale as well as the women's game. The growth of the women's game has been phenomenal, and particularly with this World Cup coming up in England, I reckon it's going to just break all sorts of records.
Spot on. It already has, Tommy. It's huge. You were talking earlier about having individual stars. Ilona Maher, like lots of you have probably come across her, those of you on social media. She's the most followed rugby international, male or female, around the world. USA star. So as we lead into the World Cup in England, we're across 8 cities. We have 16 teams up from 12. The Twickenham is going to be sold out. The last time England hosted the Women's World Cup was in 2010. It was a sellout final in the Stoop. There were 14,000 people. Like, it was incredible at the time. We're now about to sell out Twickenham. And it's
80,000, isn't it? 80,000. Wow.
It's over 80,000 in 15 years. It's absolute. Yeah, it's absolutely huge. And it's like we talked about the club game earlier. There's so many people to celebrate when a club goes well. When you look at like the growth and progress of the women's game, there's so many people that have contributed that, over the years. Like, when you think about it, we're celebrating 150 years of the IRFU this season as well. The women's game here is just over 30 years old. Like, it's just over 30 years old. So it's in a really short period, we're in a whole new era. Like, the level of the game, the performance end, the quality of rugby played, like, it's really phenomenal what the girls are already producing. So I'm absolutely buzzing. And as I look at Brian on my left, like, to see the progress of South Africa as well. And we have had our most capped women's international is Lynn Cantwell. And yeah, phenomenal person. And Lynn has worked a number of years with South Africa Rugby, has contributed hugely to where the women's game is at with yourselves. So watch out for where they're going. Our own team are absolutely going to do us proud. England, no doubt, Brian mentioned them earlier, they're fantastic. But watch out for Canada, they're incredible as well, and our New Zealand friends. Like, we're in for a phenomenal ride, the end of August into September, so cannot wait.
Yeah, no, it's going to be amazing, really is. And I know Armagh, their women's team, is getting going again next season as well. And I think we're seeing this across all clubs right across the country as well. So the growth of the women's game is just going to continue on that trajectory. The Lions is coming up next. Bryan, you played against us in 2009. For myself and Rob, we both were lucky enough to go on 2 tours. You 2 tours, well, Rob? For you as a host nation, though, like with the likes of the Lions going down to Australia this summer, how special is it for the host nation?
So I don't think the home unions understand how special the Lions series is for the Southern Hemisphere. Nathan Sharp started playing his career in Australia in 2002 after the 2001 series. He ended his career as an Australian Centurion in 2012 and never got the opportunity to play against the Lions.
Wow.
And, you know, if that doesn't give you perspective of how unique a Lions series is that the Southern Hemisphere play, and nothing will, because there are some absolute legends of the game in the Southern Hemisphere that never get the opportunity to face the Lions. And, you know, when it does come around in your career, you firstly feel extremely fortunate and privileged that you're in a position to hopefully be selected, whether that be for your club, for your province, or for the international team to play against the Lions. I think for me, in 97, as a young rugby fan, getting to witness the aura and history of the Lions come to South Africa, you know, beat the then world champions, was something that in 2009, when we then had that opportunity, you know, we knew that it wasn't about rewriting history. It was about trying to create your own legacy. And I think, you know, probably 2009, that Loftus test was as brutal as I've ever experienced. I think the collisions on that day were not only bone crunching, but almost, you know, career threatening in terms of
From the South Africans.
Well, Drico and Donny Rousseau was probably a red card, right? Let's be honest.
Don't worry about the eye gouge.
That's also true. That's also true. Don't worry about... is Rog in the room? Is Rog in the room? Ronan Agora?
No,
Oh,
he's
sorry.
not. Don't
Okay,
bring that up,
Oh,
please.
sorry, we won't go there. But it is just absolutely phenomenal. And I think I'll never forget, I said to my missus after the 2007 World Cup, I said, if I can be at the peak of my powers in 2009 and get the privilege to play against the Lions, I think I'm going to retire. And that was just the perception that down in the Southern Hemisphere we had. And I think in 2009, what really stood out for me, you know, bar the elite level of the game, was to see how, and I don't know if the supporters from the home unions understand the give back that the Lions do. And I think the both of you would know the dire need in South Africa from an underprivileged experience. So, you know, to see the Lions going out into the rural communities, not only doing training sessions, you know, giving clothing, giving donations, giving bursaries, that was just phenomenal. You know, to then have the opportunity to play against the provinces and to see the infatuation and inspiration that young players got by having this opportunity to play against what, in my opinion, is one of the true pillars and astute environments that rugby has. Long may the legacy of the Lions live on, because in the Southern Hemisphere, it is very much revered, because it is just so special, so unique, that it only comes around once in a career.
Amazing. Rob, then, just finally, with the Lions obviously going down to Australia, there's a lot of talk. You know Joe Schmidt so well. Do you think that Australia will give the Lions a real test match? What are you expecting from this Lions tour?
No, I genuinely think that the Aussies are going to come to play. You know, had you asked me last year or 18 months ago, you know, the Six Nations was humming, the home nations were playing some really good rugby, and Australia just weren't at the races. If you watch their Super 15 performances this year, they've been really good. As you well know, Joe Schmidt will have something up his sleeve, 100%. The attack that the Lions are going to use, you'd have to imagine, will be predominantly the Irish system. And Joe knows that system inside out. So I'm really looking forward. I think it's going to be an unbelievable tour. The excitement is starting to build now. And I would like to see Australia win one of the first 2 tests. Nothing is better than a third test Lions tour. So, you know, I think the Lions hopefully will win it 2-1, but it's not the walkover that we all maybe perceive it to be.
Sue, what do you think?
Oh, listen, a good competitive Lions test, but I don't think there's any concern. I think it absolutely will be. There's so much riding on it. I think it's been really exciting to watch how Australia have really taken themselves on in the last couple of seasons. and no doubt you have Joe up against Andy. It's going to be incredible. And on a personal level, I'll be rooting for a match official team in the middle of it that nobody's talking about them afterwards.
Yeah, we're all
For
hoping
most
for
of that, so we talk about the progressiveness of the game. I mean, there's now a women's Lions series. There's a women's Barbarians. I mean, 30 years ago when the Irish women started out, it was a sort of far-fetched dream, and that is incredibly important, not only for the club game, but to see that there is a level of professional elite status that a woman can achieve in the game of rugby.
Oh, 100%, Brian, and it's great you say that, exactly that. And what's really special, what people probably don't know, is the work that was done to land on a line series that is specific for the women's game. So it's not just copying what's there for the men's. There was a whole lot of work. It's like, actually, here we are. This is what we can now look forward to, and this is what's going to work and complement the whole progress around the professionalisation of the women's game. The Barbarians is there the last couple of seasons. We look forward to the Women's Lions Tour. We'll land in New Zealand. And yeah, the road into that is just going to be phenomenal.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Right, finally, Brian, you're not going home. You're playing football next week. You can't kick a ball. What the hell's going on? You could just run fast.
I perfected the shink, the kick off the shin. I thought that went really well. So the one thing I have promised myself is that I have put on a bit of weight post-rugby.
So what is it? What do you do? What are you playing?
I have no idea. I'll find out.
Soccer Aid in
Soccer
Wembley,
Aid
is
at
it?
Old Trafford next week, Sunday.
Wow.
The one promise I have made to myself, given how extremely unfit I am, is that I cannot let a 140-kilogram Wayne Rooney round me. If I let that happen, I might as well just retire.
Where can we watch?
No, please don't watch. I think it is on ITV2. But it's going to be massive. I think the likes of Paul Scholes, Gary Neville, Peter Schmeichel's in our group, Edwin van der Sar, Bear Grylls is playing for the England 11.
Must be better than him.
Wow, I'm definitely not as fit as him, and might have to pull out an army knife at some point during that game to cut the ropes on his legs. But again, I think to your point around give back charity, Sam Thompson actually took the match ball from Chelsea Stadium to Old Trafford. He raised £1.5 million for UNICEF, and just to see how people get behind that grassroots level give back opportunity. Events like this. The financial status of things becomes incredibly important. So looking forward to playing my part, looking forward to hopefully not making my name arse on a rugby field, but more so on a soccer field. And if the powers that be that might have it that I can score a goal, I'm definitely going to give my two best left feet, Tommy.
Okay, well, we will be watching. Ladies and gentlemen, what an absolute pleasure it has been to have such incredible guests. They wouldn't be here without the support of everybody who's come here tonight as well. Thank you all so much for putting your hand in your pocket, buying a ticket, bidding on the auction, which is coming up next, putting your money in those envelopes as well. Thank you so much to everybody for being a part of this wonderful club. Rob Kearney, Sue Carty, and Bryan Habana, thank you so much for joining us here.